Coming up! Without a doubt, the invasion of Normandy was one of the most incredible military events in all of history. With over 100,000 Allied troops taking part, it was an astounding feat of planning, strategy, and bravery by all who were involved. One of the most noteworthy units, however, was that of the 101st Airborne, the paratroopers who were thrown behind enemy lines before anyone else. In this video, we will take a look at one of these paratroopers in particular who would make it through the Allied invasion by the blessing and protection of his own mother. Hey guys, TJ here, and before I tell you about this insane story of the D-Day paratrooper protected by his own mother, you guys are probably asking, TJ, how do you stay so well groomed and good looking? Well, the answer, my friends, is Manscaped, the sponsor of this video. After they were cool enough to send me their new performance package, they've had me covered head to toe, literally. They make awesome products for all aspects of male grooming and package it together in an awesome all-in-one grooming kit that you should check out now while gift-giving season is still here. So don't wait, go to manscaped.com/TJ3 History and use promo code TJ3 History to get 20% off your order plus free international shipping and 2 great gifts. Now, without further ado, thanks for watching and enjoy. In the dead of night, below a thick blanket of fog, airfields throughout England were buzzing with a symphony of airplane engines starting up in unison. The air was charged with a sense of worry that clung to the troops like cigarette smoke. Hundreds of paratroopers were nervously clustered together in their planes, shoulders tense and anxious with the promise of battle mere hours away. These paratroopers in particular were a part of Major General Maxwell Taylor's U.S. 101st Airborne Division, the Screaming Eagles. Each of them had the steely resolve that one would expect a soldier to have, but it always seemed to dissipate right before heading into combat. None of the usual war songs or cheers left the soldiers' lips as they waited to begin their mission in this late hour. It was 9:30 p.m. on June 5, 1944, several hours before the Allied invasion of German-held Normandy. The troopers held a weight on their shoulders that extended far beyond the 80 pounds of gear crammed into their packs. These young men carried the burden of understanding perfectly well how high the stakes of this mission were, as well as how many variables needed to go perfectly well in order for them to make it out alive. The paratroopers were a vital key of the Allied invasion being a success. Their plan was to drop the paratroopers behind German lines to take over the German defensives and retaliation points in 2 waves. The first drop was to take place under the cover of night, with over 13,000 elite paratroopers of the U.S. 82nd and 101st Airborne, and several thousand British paratroopers as well. Altogether, they would be dropped using over 1,200 aircraft about 5 hours before the sea invasion was scheduled. The second drop would take place a few hours later in the day, with more than 4,000 additional troops being dropped. In the end, over 23,000 gliders and paratroopers were dropped. Once the flanks of the assault areas were secured by the airborne, the Allies could proceed with their plan to invade Normandy by sea, both ensuring their victory and providing the paratroopers a way to retreat safely once able. Inside the aircraft, the soldiers were shoved into bucket seats with little room to move. Their worry-lined faces were cast in the shadow as they tipped their chins up, looking forward to the front of the plane to catch a glimpse of their pilot for the evening. To the troopers, this pilot could very well be a determining factor in whether or not they would survive the mission. If he was an older one at the rugged age of 25, everyone could relax knowing that their fates were secure. He would have had to succeed in a dozen missions before, so the troopers could feel more secure with his experience. At the sight of a green pilot, however, around the age of 20, the paratroopers were sure to let out gripes and comment that they were being escorted to war by what they would call a choir boy. One plane in particular held troops from the battalion of Lieutenant Colonel Robert G. Cole, including one private in particular, Private Robert C. Hillman. Hillman, like the fellow soldiers around him, was fearful of what would come next, but was ultimately prepared to defend his country and the fate of the world. As his plane hummed through the air, Hillman held one shaking palm on his parachute as he eyed the silk fabric intently, as though he was searching for something. A paratrooper's parachute held more than the trooper himself. In those tight strings, the parachutes held the very life and fate of the paratroopers. If there was even the slightest fault in a parachute, no matter how seemingly insignificant, a trooper was all but sentenced to death as they dropped through the sky.
It's in the folding of the yards of material that absolute precision and conscientiousness count for so much. Just a little carelessness, and somewhere in those hidden folds there'd be a tangle which might cost a pilot his life.
Those unlucky enough to meet this fate were given the morbidly apt nickname of a streamer, due to the tail that flaps wildly above as the soldiers fall helplessly through the air. As a result, every single parachute issued to the troops was inspected to the smallest detail, bordering on excessive if not for the gravity of the matter.
What happens to the parachutes at Duxford and Cambridge is what happens to every parachute in the country every few weeks. While the fabric has been aired, the rigging lines have been checked. It's part of a routine which adds up to safety in the air. On the devotion to duty of girls such as Lynn Thompson, the lives of many a pilot may depend each working day. 2 of Lynn's chutes have already been used in emergency. 2 pilots' mothers have this unknown girl to thank for the safety of their sons.
Typically, all parachutes issued had the name of the company that manufactured it and the information about the inspection. As Hillman studied the surface of his pack, his eye caught the logo of the Pioneer Parachute Company, which was coincidentally located in his hometown of Manchester, Connecticut. A moment later he grinned as he saw one particular detail on the inspection information of his pack. Hillman's eyes lit up despite the grim scene around him, and he immediately looked over to the man sitting next to him. "I know my chute is okay," Hillman said with a smile on his face, half shouting over the deafening roar of the plane's 2 engines. This man beside him, Wright Brown, a journalist from NBC's radio network covering the invasion, furrowed his brow in confusion at Hillman's sudden bout of confidence. Looking back at Hillman, Brown replied, "How can you be so sure?" Wright asked almost playfully. Hillman's smile grew. "Because my mother works for the Pioneer Parachute Company as an inspector." His face beamed with pride as he raised his voice again. "And her initials are on my chute." In an absolutely astounding coincidence, despite nearly 1 million parachutes being issued to the armed forces across the globe, produced by a vast number of different American firms, Hillman had somehow been assigned a parachute that was inspected by his own mother. A true 1 in a million chance that brought a gleaming smile to the young soldier on the most terrifying and suspenseful night of his life. Knowing that his mother gave the final approval for this chute to be issued was the confirmation that Hillman needed to know that he'd land safely. Thanks to his mother's careful eyes, Private Hillman landed safe and sound in the chaos of the Normandy attack and survived to go on a second tour of duty years later in the Korean War. This absurd and warm-hearted coincidence would go down as one of the most bizarre stories in all of World War II. I hope you enjoyed this historical recreation. Please make sure to click subscribe and comment if you have any ideas for future videos. If you want to support my content and get awesome bonus videos, please check out the Patreon link in the description of this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.